morning.
Good morning.
I'm Kate Fleming, and I'm the founder and director of Bridge Initiative. I wanted to just kind of talk about my background. Can you do the next slide? So, my father was an attorney, and he worked with Christo and Jean-Claude on the surrounded islands, which was both an art and environmental project on Biscayne Bay. They covered about 13 islands. And that's me with my dad at the installation. So that was my first public art installation at 3 years old. So I grew up with that and with them kind of around my childhood. Sorry. I can also just hold it because I want to be turning my head to look at the slides. Yeah. So I grew up with that as in my backyard. They were also working on kind of figuring out how the logistics of everything in our backyard as a testing place since I grew up on Biscayne Bay. So that was kind of my background, and it is sort of how I ended up now being on the board of directors of their foundation and continuing on the legacy. And like Sophie said, right now at NSU there's a beautiful exhibition of the surrounded islands. And as she was mentioning, my background was in fashion, so I went to Parsons School of Design, and I lived in New York and did work in Paris and Milan. And then around 2015, I went on an expedition to Antarctica. It was my dad's bucket list trip. He was always wanting to go, and I always loved nature, but I had kind of moved into fashion and living in the city. So I was excited to go, but I didn't realize that it would be such a life-changing expedition. It was really amazing. It was a National Geographic Lindblad expedition. There were scientists and biologists that were on the boat speaking about ice, about the ice melt, about whales, about penguins. We visited all these penguin colonies, and a biologist pointed out that the penguins were being fed by their mothers, and there were bits of glue in it, and that was actually ocean plastic that had gotten all the way to Antarctica. That really blew my mind. Back in 2015, people were talking about climate change, but not as much as we are today. And I was just so blown away by the beauty and the immenseness, and I felt so lucky to get to see it and realizing that not everybody can have that opportunity, and probably not everybody should, because then we would have major habitat degradation in these pristine areas. So I thought about what can I do? How can I give back? And that's how Bridge was born. So it took me a couple years. I still worked in fashion, and I was thinking about, how can I, as a creative person, talk about science or give a platform for scientists to be able to communicate, not just in data, which often gets lost, or scientific papers, which most people don't read. But I know that art has the power to make you really feel and fall in love with something, and when you love something, you want to protect it. And art has this ability to really take very complex things and make them more easy to understand. So that's how Bridge was born. My first project with Bridge was actually in Alaska, which I'm doing a second project now, but the next thing I did was I came back to Miami and I started Coral City Camera, which is a live feed of a coral reef in Biscayne Bay, and it's at the Port Miami. And it's been running now for 5 years. It is the longest running live feed of a coral reef, or maybe of any animals actually. So it took a lot of permitting with Durham and with the city, and we also put it at the port, so we had to get a port pass to get into Homeland Security area. It was a whole kind of thing to produce. It also is a camera that's in a globe, and it has a windshield wiper that goes around every 5 hours to get the algae off. But that's not enough, so we go and dive it every 2 weeks and scrape it with a wire toothbrush.
Wow.
Which is fun because sometimes you see Colin, who is Colin of Coral Morphologics' idea, and Bridge produced it. So you'll see him scrubbing, and he often has blue hair and kind of looks like a coral man himself. So Coral City Camera was really one of our first projects, and then and that really showed a lot of people that we started in 2019, and then it was really active in 2020, which was a great time for it to be active and for people to really engage with it. And it quickly spread, and people all over the world watch it, and then there's a whole YouTube community. And it shows the beauty of Biscayne Bay, and also what you all have in Broward too, at Port Everglades and all these areas where there's corals. And people just see it as commercial, or you think about it as just like a cruise area, or wave runners, or yachts, and girls twerking, but actually below the surface, there's an amazing marine life. And so it kind of showed the beautiful ecosystems that we live with in a city, which is very rare to be, in an area where you can go scuba diving or snorkeling, and also you can get to the Everglades, and you also have a city. So in between two different national parks, really. Then we also worked on some projects celebrating the Florida Wildlife Corridor with the artist Carlos Betancourt, and we took over the screen that was on the Intercontinental Hotel in the skyline of Miami, and brought the animals from the Everglades and from South Florida and Florida at large into the skyline of Miami to celebrate the win of the Florida Wildlife Corridor. We also worked with Carlos Betancourt when I was working for the Reef Line, and over there you can see these stars that were set up on the beach 2 years ago at Art Week. These are going to be deployed as the next deployment into the Reef Line, and it's called Reef Star, and from an airplane you're actually going to be able to see the star made of stars. And you can see all the holes and everything in this, and that's so that little fish and critters can go in and out and use it as a home. And it's made out of 3D printed marine concrete. So during the time that I moved back to Miami, I got involved at the Reef Line, and I acted as vice chair. And that was directly because of Coral City Camera and our experience with permitting there. The Reef Line actually took much more intense permitting from multiple agencies, but it was a really interesting experience to get that going. And I felt that it was very similar even to the surrounded islands and what my dad had done, being the lawyer to litigate for getting permission for the surrounded islands as well. We also have done other ways of showing public art. These boats, and I don't know if they go around Broward, but yeah, they're billboard boats, but I thought it'd be nice to use it for something beautiful and not just ads for clubs and Coca-Cola. So during Art Week, we worked with Michelle O'Donnell to make this kind of messaging that we also did on other screens throughout the US. And then this was a project we did with an artist, Orlando Estrada, kind of talking about sea level rise and the water encroaching. And this was at one of the most kind of vulnerable spots in Miami near the airport that we put that billboard up. So using public art to do different things in different mediums. We've continued working with Michelle O'Donnell a lot, and she is a Miami-born artist. She's just turned 80. You might have gone through the American Airlines terminal in Miami International Airport. The entire floor is a public artwork done by her in 1992. She also did the Port Everglades terminal, and that's some of the beautiful artwork, also made of terrazzo here in Broward County. So next slide, please. We worked with her on a project making these zines that was also just like after COVID, that we dropped around all of the institutions in Miami about seagrass decline in Biscayne Bay. And at that time, I started working on a project also to make the Bay a National Heritage Area, which has been an ongoing project for, I think it's been 4.5 years now that I've been working on it. It takes an act of Congress. But in doing that, the more fun part of that bureaucratic thing has been doing exhibitions and different projects, kind of getting people to know about it through art. So it's not just bureaucratic paperwork, but also something that kind of teaches you about the different aspects of Biscayne Bay. So we also made an exhibition about the bay at the Campong, which sits on the bay. It's a botanical garden, and it was David Fairchild's home. And that's, we did a lot of programming during that exhibition, so that's Michelle and I discussing the Bay and other aspects. And this was an exhibition, the interior with like Christo and John Claude on the islands and different artists' interpretation of what the Bay means to them. Currently, we are working with Michelle Godonor again. Sometimes one project, like I always say my projects have projects. So I start, with an artist and we have an idea and then it just keeps blooming into different ideas. So a year and a half ago, I took Michelle to a remote field station called Alaska Whale Foundation. And they study the impact of climate change in a really remote area of Alaska that is more untouched than the rest of America, in the Tongass National Forest, which is really kind of the lungs of America. Like they always talk about the rainforests and the Amazon being the lungs. Well, this is the biggest swath of natural forests that we have in the U.S. So they also study the songbirds when they come and go, so that they can kind of see how climate change is changing in these areas. And we took her out there for a week. She made a body of artwork after it, inspired by this expedition. And we also are making a 20-minute documentary about the experience. And I'll show you a little preview, a little trailer of that.
Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. We have other little things in there. It's beautiful. Oh, look at all this. Oh, this is amazing. What a world down here. I'm going to draw them. If you have the green beginning of oxygen on Earth and you imagine this is the beginning of creatures, we're getting a series here, okay? This is how I always play. Let's shake the dish. Let's see what we have now. Oh boy, we have a whole different landscape now. I can't believe it. Have you seen anything this remarkable recently? Hello, whale! Whale, it's beautiful! What a performance! Don't go away! It's not just about the whales, the grandeur. You need the environment. You need what feeds them, what gives them life, what surrounds them, which means you need to reflect into the water. You need to take a spoon of water, look at it under your microscope, just wonder how much of this is left.
So, thank you. That's just a teaser of the documentary, and we're about to go into film festivals with the documentary, and it will be the spring and summer. And then we also are going to have a screening of the documentary around Earth Day at the Standard in Miami and FIU. So I'll be posting about that if you guys want to attend either of those. Michelle will also be in town talking. We'll have a panel and Q&A after the screening. So she made, as you saw in the documentary, she started a little book about this expedition, similar to the book that she made about Blachet. It's a very big one, but we're also making zines that will be little printouts of this artist's book. And she made a body of art also. You see her in the preview collecting all the seaweed and pressing it. She took that back and she went to St. Louis, and in the documentary we follow her, and pressed all that seaweed into a paper that kind of made human forms. So there's 2 large artworks and 2 smaller ones. And we're going to create an exhibition around this film with those works, and also probably an edition of prints. And the hope is to raise awareness about Alaska Whale Foundation. Some of the proceeds will go back to them, and then to continue working on these projects where we take expeditions with artists out into remote places, and then have them create a body of work and create a documentary that everybody can see and experience. The next documentary that we're working on in pre-production is in the Ecuadorian Amazon, and we're taking Nicholas Gallinen, who's Tlingit from Southeast Alaska actually, to the Ecuadorian Amazon, to the Achuar territory. And they're a tribe that's been living there for thousands of years in that same territory, much in the way that they've always lived. And I think it'll be really interesting. Nicholas has never been there. For a Native American to have a dialogue with people who have had very different experiences, yet there's a lot of shared things between them. And there's a lot of threats currently in the Ecuadorian Amazon and the Achuar territory. People want to build roads, which always leads to logging, always leads to oil drilling. And one of the biggest environmental cases actually happened near there, and that's the Exxon Chevron, a huge oil spill that has been for 20 years leaching into the Amazon. There's been many lawsuits. It's still kind of ongoing, and they never filled the tar pits properly, so it's still leaching, and it's affecting communities and causing cancer and havoc, and also the whole water system of that area of the Amazon. So we're going to take Nicholas Gallinen out there, and he is an amazing artist. He's been in the Venice Biennale. He did a project recently at Art Week where it was kind of like a giant colonial ship in the sand, and it had messages on the sails about colonial ideations, and his work is very vast and very interesting. So I'm excited to see what he's going to create from this, and what the documentary and the conversations between the Achuar and Nicholas are going to be like. One of my favorite quotes is, "The role of the artist is to make the revolution irresistible," by Tony Cage Barbara. And I think that that's really what we're trying to embody, and I hope that you guys can join the revolution and help support Bridge and the artists that are trying to tell these stories. So if you want to learn more, you can scan this and it'll take you to our website. And I invite you to follow us on Instagram and come to any events that we have coming up. Thank you so much.
How do you finance everything? That's a good question.
Through grants, but mostly through family foundations, which I find is so much easier and more accessible than grants these days.
Okay.
So we've developed relationships with different family foundations, and then you know that they're going to give every year, and it has a lot less grant reporting. So for instance, Lindblad's, that boat I went on, and I didn't know them at the time, to Antarctica, the National Geographic Lindblad expeditions, they have a family foundation, and they support us every year and help support this film about the whales, and Michelle is a donor a lot. And then there's several other family foundations. And then when I try to do different projects, I try to find individuals or philanthropists that are really interested in that area. So right now I'm trying to raise money for the Ecuadorian Amazon expedition. We still need funds for pre-production and to send all the videographers and everybody there. So I'm looking at people that care a lot about the Amazon and trying to reach out directly to them, because it's just so hard to get grants from anyone these days. I'm sure you all have great artists.
I have a question. Do you accept submissions for like take for instance, I'm an artist, I work with sustainability at like the core and amongst other things like identity and what have you. Do you accept submissions for ideas for projects?
Yes, yeah. Some of the projects that I have worked on have been submissions or conversations. Yes.
And how would
So you can email me, and the email is on the website, kate@bridgeinitiative.org or info@bridgeinitiative.org.
I just subscribed.
Oh, I was just gonna ask, what, do you have an Instagram?
Yes, it's bridgeinitiative.org on Instagram. Yeah, that'd be great to follow, because then you can kind of see what events we're doing.
Do you know any artists in South Florida that are working on actually solving environmental problems or working with scientists? You mentioned Colin at Coral Mark Logic.
Yes.
He's obviously a scientist and artist kind of combined. Are you aware of others that are doing that type of work, that they're actually engaged in the science, in the actual trying to regenerate or help a carbon issue or imbalance? Are you aware of those artists?
Yeah, I would say like for sure the Reefline project is, which is I don't know if I touched upon or if you're familiar what it is, but it's a 7-mile artificial reef and sculpture park. And all the artists that are working on that are engaging with scientists in order to really understand, like they'll have an idea, like Leandro Elrich did Order of Importance, and it sort of looks like a parking lot. But you can't just have smooth surfaces that look like cars. In the cement, there needs to be notches and grooves for things to grow on. And they put coral lock systems, so they're growing. Actually, Colin of Coral Logic has a lab now where he's growing corals that then will be screwed onto the modules in the reef line. So I think all of the artists that are going to be working on the reef line, and there's going to be many more, and there's going to be open calls, are going to have to work with scientists in order to understand these. And they're also trying to work with a marine cement that carbon captures and takes bad things out of the water. So that's a lot of testing, because like it exists outside, like for real cement, it's outside, but we don't know what happens with all the things that it pulls in under the water. So there's a lot of testing and things like that. So I would say also Lauren Shapiro, are you familiar with her work? She's a ceramicist. And she's at BaCA, which is a big artist residency kind of similar to this in Miami. She works with scientists a lot, and she's been 3D scanning reefs in different areas, and then she creates them out of ceramics. But she's a master scuba diver, so she's diving with scientists from NOAA and doing all sorts of things like that. Off the top of my head, those are who I can think of, but basically that's also what we try to do, is every time we take an artist out into an ecosystem, whether it's just the Everglades or an expedition to the Amazon, we're always with scientists, or in the Amazon's case, we're gonna be with indigenous folks which know as much or more than the scientist does, so that they can learn about the ecosystem and communicate that. Or sometimes they might have an idea that can solve a problem there.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about communication, there's communicating an issue, right? Or even talking about how, in some cases, it's being worked on. And then there's other artists like Mel Chin, for instance, who actually were like, let's talk about like actual solutions, let's use this. And then the artwork becomes a way of, in some ways, funding that work. You mentioned that with the documentary and the kind of kelp prints, right? Because then she can sell those and get those to the nonprofit.
Right, exactly.
So there's a way that it actually can do some of the work, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just curious that, given the richness of the ecosystems in South Florida that we're not seeing more artists and scientists actively engaged in those types of, solution finding, basically.
Absolutely.
So it's really important. Thank you.
Here.
I'm not sure if this is even your job, but the, there's this belief system that God gave us these resources to exploit, like they're there for humans to use. Like, how do you break through to people like that? Or is that just, there's no hope?
No, that is what I would like to break through, that belief. And I think especially, let's take the Everglades. I think that people think of it or demonize that landscape. They make it scary when you talk about alligator alcatraz. The way that they talk about big cypress and things like that. It's like making it, and then just saying it's a swamp with alligators and that there's no one out there. But yet the Miccosukee live right there. And so I am working on a project to show the beauty of big cypress and documenting and photographing the folks that live in the Miccosukee community right there, and showing the beauty and showing the people and the beautiful people so that you can have that contrast, and maybe it will shift the way people think about the place. So, I mean, I hope that somehow I can break through these things, but it's a good question.
I was just gonna say, I'm not sure if you were aware too, Pompano Beach has a public art program that's an underwater sculpture garden. Actually, before you were coming here, I was reviewing calls for our 4th round. So we have a 324-foot tanker ship that we sunk in 2016, and it's part of Shipwreck Park. It's called the Lady Luck, and so we have a bunch of ships that were sank, but kind of recreating their own artificial reef system, which is really cool.
That's awesome.
And it brings in really great tourism stuff for
Yeah.
people to scuba dive and learn about it. We're actually working on our 4th sculpture right now to fabricate and then sink and attach. We have a sculpture at the beach right now called Reef Rider, which is really cool.
Is it with Aura, with the Ocean Rescue
So
Alliance?
we're actually starting to work with them.
Okay, with Shelby.
Yeah, so I had a meeting with them on Monday. We want to put them into our public art master plan because they're
That's
really
great.
in that. So I know they work with Wahoo Bay, or they're going to start working with Wahoo Bay, which is another sculpture, or not sculpture, but with artificial reefs that we're putting in there, and they get grants to do that and permits for that. So it is cool at Pompano really building it up more, and definitely with the Shipwreck Park, we're doing more sculptural work. Like we have a seahorse at the beach that people can sit on, and then we'll sink it. It gets people to go on there. And people who don't even understand about just that we need to regrow it.
Yeah.
So it's really cool.
That's really cool. I would love to come dive.
Yeah, you should.
Here.
It's deep. We want to do a lower one because it's about 75 feet, but 110 feet all the way to
Oh,
the
wow,
bottom.
okay.
And I want to get one a little closer, even for
Closer
the
to sharper
snorkel.
snorkelers.
Yeah. Permits for that are a lot harder, but yeah.
Yeah, is there continued plans with the 3D printing? Are you going to keep moving forward with that, or was that a one-off project? Does it need?
With the
That's-
reef line?
Yeah, with the 3D printed reef line, yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's the next deployment is the Stars by Carlos Betancourt. It's called Reef Star. And I'm not so involved anymore, but yes, they're gonna continue trying. I think that some will be 3D printed and some won't. The problem with 3D printing is they're quite light. So then you have to make a very, very, very heavy base because they need to be tons in order to stay and resist ocean waves and things like that.
Has that material been tested for long periods of time, or is this fairly new? Like, its durability and impact, is it something that has been tested a long time?
I mean, it's been tested, but not that long because it's a new material.
Right. Is there a period of time before you continue doing that kind of thing where it's gonna get comfortable, right? Like, to see what those impacts are? Or are you just going to continue with multiple sites?
Well, I think that the Reef Star is the first one that's gonna be 3D printed, or it is the first one.
Mhm.
And I don't know if they're gonna continue doing them all 3D printed, some of them will be cast concrete. They test everything in the University of Miami Hurricane Simulator so that you can kind of make a model to scale to the weight and do different kind of wave impacts through that, which I know that they do with every single reef that's deployed.
Okay.
And it's been a couple of years that this marine concrete has been out, and there's been a lot of seawalls that have been made of it, of the 3D printed marine concrete, and have been very successful and like growing seagrass and different mangroves and things like that.
Okay.
I have, two questions. One, in regards to a comment that we have before, like for the artists in South Florida, I think maybe for some of us that we love art and we love the cause and help, will it be a possibility to have a program to guide us how to implement our creativity, merge with your cause, or what advice do you have for artists that would like to participate in your program? And the other question I had was, are you guys Miami Beach based or or just Miami?
Well, I live and work in Miami Beach, but we are doing projects that are nationally and now internationally with the Ecuadorian Amazon. I don't have open calls because it is really specific, but I'm open to like people can email me ideas. The reason why we don't have open calls is because we're going often to remote field stations or going on boats with scientists. It has to be this kind of like matchmaking that's very specific. But also I've had artists give me ideas and then I work with them and match them to a scientist. But I need to know one or the other, and it needs to be like a little matchmaking game. In the future, we might do different residencies or programs. Like we just did something with plein air painting in different ecosystems, and that was really fun. It was with 10 artists. So we might do bigger things like that in the future. But like I said, you can email me with any ideas that you have.
Okay, so thank you, Kate.
Thank
very
you so
much.
much, guys.
On request, can you take a group photo? Just there, I like your group photo.